This is part 2 of my watercolor swatch card series. In part 1, it was yellow and orange. This time it's red and purple. And don't worry, that includes pink. To start things off, it's Daniel Smith with Pyrrole Scarlet. Now, I want to point out that while I'm not normally concerned about the codes referring to light fastness, transparency, stainability, etc., those qualities do come into question at times. With my last set of swatch cards, I added some codes to the backside, but for this new set, I'm including that info on the front side. These codes aren't entirely consistent across brands, though, so unless you're familiar with each coding system, it could be confusing. Well, it's confusing for me anyway. But at least with these cards, I know what brand I'm dealing with. So if it comes to it, I can either refer to their brochure or their online color chart. So in the case of this particular color, the codes tell me that Daniel Smith gives it a light fastness rating of 1, which is their highest rating, and they categorize it as semi-transparent and low staining. This is one of my few colors from Sennelier, Permanent Alizarin Crimson Deep. These aren't in any strict order, but rather loose color groupings, which is mostly how they're arranged in my drawer of watercolors. And since I've let my studio get a bit disorganized, there are some colors that I neglected to place in their proper grouping. Those will be gathered in the final video, so they get included too. Just letting you know in case someone out there is thinking, wait, I could have sworn she had such and such color. Not that I think these videos get examined that thoroughly, but a part of me always expects somebody to jump in with finger pointed at my errors and inconsistencies. You might be thinking, man, this gal's got issues. Maybe, but I also grew up with 7 siblings, so... This maroon perline from M. Graham is, I think, my favorite red. It hooked me right away. Pretty sure I featured this one in its own video a ways back when I first acquired a tube. These days, I don't feel a need to add to my collection because I don't lack choices. Sure, I'd like to explore more of the Sennelier, Schmincke, and perhaps dip my toe in the Rembrandt lines, but that's mostly me being greedy. As far as brushes are concerned, I'd like to try some more brands and their synthetic lines. Maybe Raphael, maybe another Escoda. I have one thanks to a viewer. But I've been really happy with Princeton's Neptune and Aqua Elite brushes. Another quill or two are on my wish list because I love my one quill brush. Schmincke's Potter's Pink is probably the closest match to the color on my nails there, which is Eager from LA Colors. My Schmincke collection is limited to one 6-color set of 5 milliliter tubes. Usually, Schmincke is pretty pricey for us here, but producer Mike found a special deal. So that's how I was able to add a handful of Schmincke's to my palette. I suppose I should specify that they're from the Horadam professional line rather than the Academy student line, which is why there's an H on the card. As for papers, I want to get some more Hanamula collection pads and maybe try some 300-pound paper. I don't plan on getting any etcher stuff like I've seen on other channels because I think they're overpriced. I mean, I expect they're good, but can any watercolor sketchbook be $40 good? I doubt it. Prove me wrong, Etcher. Send me free products and make me eat my words. It's worth a shot, right? Probably not, though. If it were, people would be doing it all the time. Like, Cuisinart, I've never used your $200 coffee maker, but I think it sucks. Change my mind. The brush I used for the top and side swaths is a synthetic sable 1/4-inch Aqua Elite stroke from Princeton. This has gotten a lot of use. I like it for swatching, but also for painting. For the leafy sprig, it was a synthetic squirrel number 4 round Neptune, also from Princeton. Yeah, I like their brushes. Earlier, I mentioned my drawer of watercolors, and if you're new here, you might be wondering, the what now? After going through several types of palettes, I settled on just storing my watercolor pans, which are mostly full-sized, in a shallow drawer. Specifically, the top one in my wooden art storage chest. Well, technically, it's the top 2 drawers, but details like that weaken the narrative. All of that doesn't include my compact sets such as the Cotman, Phoenix, and Derwent Graphitin palettes. Also, I keep my Mission Gold watercolors in a Fusion 33 plastic palette. All or some of this may change in the future, but for many months this has been working for me since I really only art in my studio. Of course, those who've been watching this channel for a while might be thinking, there she goes again about her drawers. No, I don't think you've forgotten the other times I mentioned it, but YouTube is like a city bus. Sure, some riders hop on at the start and stay till the end of the line, whereas others board midway, get freaked out by the atmosphere, and demand to be released at the next stop. And that's neither the first nor the last time I'll use a bus analogy. The point is, yeah, I sometimes repeat things, but it's for reasons. My nephew Remy has been visiting for a couple of weeks. It's been great. I've gotten out of the studio and learned how to not start a conversation with, "Hey, so about my YouTube channel." Now, when he leaves, I'll have to learn how to not start a conversation with, "Hey, so who's down for another round of Dungeon Mayhem?" Dungeon Mayhem is a Dungeons and Dragons based card game. Back in the day, I dabbled in D&D and even tried Magic the Gathering, but those are too involved and overly complicated. These days, I prefer more casual gaming. Dungeon Mayhem is easy to learn and moves pretty quickly. They even claim that 8-year-olds can play it. That's my kind of game. The downside is there are only 4 characters to choose from: a barbarian, a wizard, a paladin, and a rogue. The upside is you can get additional characters from Battle for Baldur's Gate and Monster Madness. And you can bet I'm itching to play an owlbear named Hoots Magoots. By this time, it's probably more than obvious that this voiceover is an optional feature, meaning FOMO doesn't apply here, since this video is intended as a mostly unchallenging visual experience. Maybe even therapeutic, since I, for one, find these things relaxing and somewhat meditative. Then again, some people find the human voice does something similar for them, and I get it. I often enjoy readings and audio performances, preferably in the mystery and ghost story genres. Sometimes it's for the story, but sometimes it's just to have that sound in the background. I guess what I'm saying is, it doesn't hurt my feelings if people fall asleep while playing this. It might be fun to hold a quiz at the end and give a prize to whoever aces it. But no, no quiz and no prize. Sorry. Speaking of red, St. Valentine's Day is coming up. Do you remember in elementary school having to dispense Be Mine cards to all of your classmates? It was such an odd practice and totally negated the whole "you're special to me" sentiment. The best part was crafting a cardboard mailbox to hold all of your cards. Some kids, or their mothers rather, were extra thoughtful and tucked a stick of gum inside the envelopes. Anyway, neither producer Mike nor I are big greeting card people, so we both see this holiday as a good excuse to buy chocolate, because the more seasonally specific the packaging, the more fun it is to purchase. Da Vinci's quinacridone alizarin crimson uses PV19, which seems to be a prevalent and popular pigment, just going by how many of my paints contain it. Quinacridone rose might be the most well-known form. It's pretty versatile. It can run from mid-red to cool red to purpley. I sometimes have a hard time differentiating the various shades of red. I don't know. Is it a must-have? Do you have PV19 in your palette? I sometimes fantasize about having a little art or stationery shop, but it's the Black Books version where I berate my sales staff for making me have to go through the process of reordering stock, and where I get to shove customers out the door with a broom. Black Books is a Britcom from the early 2000s. Wow, we're a couple of decades in, and I think that's the first time I've said it that way. 2000s. It was weird at first, but the more I repeat it, 2000s, the more I like it. How was I saying it before? 2000s. What was I thinking? This color's name, Rose Madder, had poked at my brain because it sounded familiar until I recalled there is a Stephen King novel titled Rose Madder. I haven't read it, not because I don't want to, but because I don't read nearly as much as I did when I was younger. My thoughts then run to Rose Red, another King story, but I remember it as a mini series from the early 2000s. It was exciting at the time because much of it was shot locally around the Seattle area. In particular, at a property called Thornwood Castle. I haven't been there, but I understand it's currently a B&B and is a popular venue for weddings and other large events. This is Canson XL cold pressed watercolor paper. Would I have rather used 100% cotton paper? Sure. But this project took at least 7 sheets of 11-inch by 15-inch paper. I'm not giving these cards away as gifts, nor am I selling them. They're just going into my repurposed tea tin. So I chose the least pricey option. An alternative to the tea tin thing is a binder with trading card sleeves. There are 9 pockets per page, so I could fit 18 cards per sleeve. I told myself I wasn't going to go that route because nothing screams nerd louder. But maybe it's time I stopped fighting it. Maybe even get a corner rounder for that finishing touch. I think everyone has an opinion about Canson XL. Mine is ambivalent. It has a place in my studio and is relegated to mostly practicing, experimenting, and swatching. I don't like to use it for painting projects because I have a stash of 100% cotton paper for that. That's partly thanks to producer Mike and partly thanks to viewer donations via the Inkworks Ko-fi page. In the past, I've mentioned paper security, but thankfully I haven't had to stress over low paper levels for quite some time. Crimson Lake. Pretty color. But I can't not think of the movie, Crimson Peak. If you haven't seen it, be warned, there are spoilers ahead. It's been described as a gothic romance with ghosts. Look, I admire much of Guillermo del Toro's work. In fact, The Devil's Backbone, Another Ghost Story, is one of my favorite movies. But although it's very pretty to look at, there are things about Crimson Peak that don't work for me. One of those things is that it tries to make a serial killing two-timer sympathetic. Sure, it was technically his sister slash lover that administered the poison, but it was with his knowledge and assistance. Which reminds me, the young heroine, Edith, was supposedly smart and capable, but really, Will you just stop drinking the tea already? And we're supposed to forgive all of the deception, murder, and infidelity because Thomas and his sister were abused as children. Okay, but why should that absolve only Thomas and not Lucille? Maybe the editor is to blame, but the sister was never shown in a sympathetic light. And having what's his name play the repentant villain doesn't sway me in the least. Plus, I'm supposed to believe that a huge Victorian house like that didn't have a single servant. Did Lucille, the sister, do all of the cooking, cleaning, laundry, wood chopping, etc.? And what was with the big holes in the roof? Poor Lucille must have been run ragged between lighting all the fireplaces and sweeping up the snow and debris in the main hall. No wonder she was pissed off. Never mind that the only labor seen on screen was lifting a tea kettle. You can't see it because this voiceover is being recorded days later, but I'm currently wearing nail polish that's very close to Rose of Ultramarine by Daniel Smith. It's from Butter London and it's called Pash. Well, one hand anyway. There were 4 mini bottles of nail polish in my Christmas stocking, and I had a couple of colors left to try out. So Pash is on one hand, while Brawley is on the other. The funny thing is, if Brawley were lightened a tad, it would probably look a lot like Daniel Smith's Moonglow, which is coming up soon. For a while, Holbein's Mineral Violet was my only professional grade convenience purple. I think it's a lovely shade, but I wouldn't call it a strong color. So when I got a tube of Daniel Smith's Carbazole Violet, I was knocked over by its intensity. Since then, I've added several more shades of purple from multiple brands and haven't used this mineral violet much at all. Daniel Smith's Moon Glow was featured in a previous video, and I created an alternate version in another video as well. The first time I noticed this one was through Kimberly Crick's channel. If there is rock star status in watercolor YouTube, I'd say Kimberly qualifies. She does the work, shares her findings, and offers alternatives. And her website is a valuable resource for watercolorists. I got to check out an antique mall in the next town over. I was hoping to find some old magazines for collaging or maybe a storage piece for either my fountain pens or ink bottles. We did find a few items, and I'll likely share what we bought in a future video. I think we spent 2 hours there, and it could easily have been 3. Somewhat surprising was how much some people want for their old ephemera. $4 for one postcard, and a used one at that. I suppose I should have haggled like $20 for the whole box. But I'm introverty and want less interaction, not more. Golden oldies from the 1950s played in the background, giving the place a very boomerish feel. And I'm a Gen Xer, but there was about 10 minutes when the tunes stopped, and there were only the occasional sounds of rustling paper and scraping wood. Creepy, curious goods vibes for sure. I side-eyed the dolls, half expecting one to turn toward me, but it was all good once the platters kicked in again. Yeah, I don't get out much. So I just recently heard of something called INCOWRIMO. It seems to be along the lines of NaNoWriMo and Inktober, but INCOWRIMO stands for International Correspondence Writing Month, which is February, which is a few days from now. Apparently, the challenge is to write and post a letter for each day of the month. So I'm sitting here looking at my overflowing basket of Hello Kitty stationery and thinking I've got paper, envelopes, pens, and inks. I could even tuck a mini painting inside each envelope. Usually, I pass on these kinds of challenges since they're big time commitments. But if I changed the parameters to better suit me, say maybe a dozen letters, that could work. I don't intend to add my address to the official INCOWRIMO list, since I plan to only send letters, not necessarily receive them, unless there are any InkWorks viewers who would like to receive one of those letters. In that case, drop me an email, inkworksart@gmail.com, with your mailing address, and I'll do my best to get one of those letters to you. And if you want to write back, just let me know if the contents are for my eyes only or shareable with viewers. Although I don't know what to expect, I'm kind of excited about it. And if anyone has participated in similar challenges, tell me about it, either in the comments or via email. So far, I haven't used this one much. Cobalt Violet Hue from Schmincke. Generally speaking, I appreciate granulation, and I admire artists who know how to show it off well. When I paint, granularity doesn't normally enter my thought process, so its strengths aren't really featured in my work. Don't go looking for aubergine in Da Vinci's regular watercolor lineup because, surprise, it's in the Paul Jackson series subcategory. Returning to the topic of things I've never heard of before, crumble cookies. They're a cookie chain that's apparently all over the country, yet they're totally new to me. Someone brought over a box of their assorted offerings, and they are impressively good. But they're so rich, I can only indulge in a slice at a time. So I treat them like little 4-inch pies. OMG, the caramel popcorn cookie. Not only that, but there was also a box from Mochi Nut. Mochi Nut makes fried donuts using rice flour, so they have a light, crispy outside and a soft, chewy inside. From what I can tell, they're mostly located in Asia and California, but are expanding. They also have fun flavors, but aren't as rich as crumble cookies. Plus, they're fun to pull apart. Kinda like tear and share bread. I'm delighted to share this swatching session with you. Red and purple are associated with anger, rage, and passion. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty chill here. Of course, that might be due to the big old mug of tea I've been drinking. Until next time, stay artsy, my friends.